Fulcrum of Truth.
All right.
Welcome back.
Second discussion for today. Yeah.
Yeah. And we want to get into, we kind of sparked off a little bit of a conversation about evolution. And as a result of that, I think we need to address something.
Yeah.
Um,
So in the last episode, I talked about a dinosaur that had two brains.
yeah.
And Dave's BS meter went off immediately, as you may have seen. Dave is has an uncanny ability for the truth. Okay, like you guys saw me try and explain to him how there was a dinosaur with two brains, and he didn't listen. You could tell he was squirming inside because it just didn't feel right, So afterwards, immediately I dropped on Google and I searched to see if this was true, because literally I can learn something in college and then Dave can tell me that maybe not true, and then I'll go find out that it's not. Now I looked it up and I want to read what Google said.
I mean, it's interesting. Actually, it really fits so well into what we were saying in our last couple conversations.
Yeah.
So
Famously, in the 1880s, a cast was made of a stegosaurus's brain case. It was discovered that despite its massive 5 to 10 ton size, its brain was little bigger than a walnut. How could such a large animal function with a 2-ounce brain? It was theorized. Oh,
interesting.
Okay. It was theorized that
because there was empirical evidence to support this theory.
A cavity. In a small brain. We had a small brain data in this large animal. Empirical evidence. They made a theory. Hollow space discovered near the hip region of the spinal cord must contain a second brain. This was the theory. This second brain would help control the back half of the animal, possibly allowing it to react faster to predators, as I said in the last video. Similar hollow spaces were subsequently found in the rear ends of many other large sauropod dinosaurs. Thus, the myth of the dinosaur butt brain was born.
Hilarious.
The myth.
So now we call it a myth. So even though I don't think anybody has ever explained why that is there.
Yeah. So I was incorrect in the truth in what I was saying. There seems to not have been, or at least now, the theory is that there wasn't. Okay. But as you see,
though that the theory was that there was.
Oh, I mean, for all you out there that were talking about, or thinking that like a theory means something, take this into consideration, okay? In 1880s, they had a theory that there was dinosaurs with two brains.
That's
right?
What, 140 years ago.
And 140 years later, I'm sitting here talking about how it thought it was true because I got taught it in school when I was younger. And turns out, no, that's a myth. But it was a theory.
Now we call it a myth.
Yeah.
What's the word myth?
So what you're telling me is that theories can become myths. That's interesting. I thought they were based on empirical evidence. How can myths be based on empirical evidence?
Yeah, we had such a good laugh at this, and I hope you are too, because I'm sitting here and you're bringing up a dinosaur with two brains, and I'm like, how can we even know that? Like, we only have bones. Like, how can anybody say what? But it was believable.
So everyone listening, question: what is a theory? What is a hypothesis? What are you being taught? What is empirical data? Exactly. How relative is it? How relative is the universe? And how accurate and truthful are the things you're being taught and learning?
And I'll be honest, this happens to us all the time, right? Because there are no bounds on where our conversations go, right? We will explore and we'll chase down anything that we see or think or and just discuss it.
Wait, there's this thing that we rely on in our work that we've been teaching everybody: the dependability of past knowledge.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Past theories, yeah. This is why.
Yeah.
So, onward.
Yeah, moving on.
We go. Yeah.
So funny. I hope you all got a good laugh at that.
Yeah. But understand why we have such open, we think without a box. Those boxes are those theories that people put around us, and people say, "Oh, I think outside the box." You need to think outside the box. No, you need to think without a box at all, and that allows you to have the ideas that me and Dave are about to talk about when it comes to evolution.
Yeah, and evolution is such a broad topic for me. I like and I talked about it in our last video. The one thing that I always fall back to is eyesight. Okay, when it comes to evolution, because it really does support the theory of evolution, right? I'll go ahead and throw that word out there again.
We kind of destroyed it. We've done it now in 10 episodes. If you watch these 10 episodes, I think yeah.
We still call it the theory of evolution. And eyesight is one of those things that's very unique, but also not unique within the animal world. And it supports this idea of evolution very strongly. But Gary brought up some points that I've not thought about in those terms before. I've thought about the idea that we have a front and a back, and we have a left and a right, and why these things might be. And I've thought of them on a physical sense, or a set of physical terms, that the way it has to develop because of the laws of the universe is that there has to be a front and a back. There has to be a left and a right, right? These opposites, these dualities must exist.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a very good point that I hadn't considered. That the reason for forward and backward is the duality. That there has to be opposites.
Physically, the chemicals cannot rearrange themselves in a way that allow.
So forward and backwards are inverse from each other, and they are. That's an amazing concept.
Yeah. So I've thought about that concept before, but I've never applied it to eyesight and evolution, which is one of the things that I always fall back on with eyesight. Because the one thing that really has driven the concept and theory of evolution into me personally, and now I'm questioning it. Even today, I'm starting to question, am I thinking the right way about this? But eyesight was always one of those things that really convinced me that evolution is real, and that that process, that theory of how it works is pretty accurate. And maybe it is still it can still be pretty accurate, but not be completely accurate, right? And hence the word theory. But the reason, if you're unaware, when we look in the historical record of animals and life, we go back, and different branches of the tree that split long ago, long before we ever had eyes, long before anybody ever had eyes, we all developed eyes.
Yeah.
So many animals that split from the evolutionary tree, as it's described, have developed eyes on their own. And I've given this example to you before, that if you're in a room, and I'm going to use male and female here, and I'm a male, so I'm going to say it from the male perspective, but it could be applied from the female perspective as well. If me and you are in a room with a female, and I have eyes and you don't have eyes, who do you think is going to procreate?
Obviously.
I'm going to win that every time.
Yeah.
Every single time.
Yeah.
It's such an advantage that it's almost impossible to think that you would develop an animal without eyes.
Well, how about this? What about the idea that the animal that the basis for life, or if you go far enough back in the evolutionary tree, or far enough back in the divergence tree, and in species and biology, right? We developed eyes way back then, 2 eyes. Like,
Yeah, why two?
no, no,
Why
no,
would-
no. Listen, way back then we developed two eyes before we split, before we turned into a million different species.
That's possible too.
So this is what I'm saying. I think that that's very likely that you go back to single-celled organisms and stuff like that, right? They first popped out the ability to sense light, two eye sensors, two eyeballs, and then every mutation then were forward, had the two eyes. Basically, if that would have had a three-eye adaptation back then, everything would have three eyes now. You know what I mean? Like that development of eyeballs to see sight, I think happened so early in an evolutionary tree, right? That's why we see every animal having them now. That's why you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
Not as
and I
though-
think that would be the contending theory
Yeah.
on that.
Not as
I'm
though
I'm
like
only
each
basing
one individually developed eyes.
I'm only basing this on what current modern science says
Yeah.
is that we diverged genetically long before eyes were created, but these different branches that diverged, they all ended up, and it's called convergent evolution, right? And because it's just because it's such an advantageous thing. Although, what you were saying in the last video brings up a lot of questions, because in the billion plus years of life, I can't think of a single example of an animal that has eyes on the back of its head.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you have something like a chameleon, or like
Fake eyes, right?
animals that have eyes on the side of their head and they can kind of see 360 degrees almost.
I think goats have the
horizontal. Cows,
pupils,
goats, those
yeah.
kind of
They can
animals
see extremely
where they can,
panoramic,
but it's
kinda.
not 360 degrees.
No, it's kind of like fighting to see as much as it can, but limited by some invisible law.
Why?
Well, I can tell you-
Why would we not also why two eyes?
Yeah.
Why not? I don't see any examples of three eyes. Now, we have things like spiders and they have a bunch of eyes, but are those really individual, or are they working, I don't know, are they working as a group? We see some animals that have multiple eyes, or you think like a bee, they give the example
Yeah.
of a bee's eye has almost like it's effectively multiple eyes, even though it's
Yeah.
only two eyes. But
I would
still,
almost say that a bee and some of these other animals, like a fly, to have these weird eye systems, right? That they're inferior biologically than us, right? They're, the goal.
are they though?
It's hard. That's what I'm just thinking about, right? Like, are they inferior? But inferior is the wrong word. I would say that
I feel like
they're some type of less advanced. You know what I mean? And that's even a bad description too. I can use a couple words to describe like how it is, like to give you the gist of what I mean. Like they're at a lower level, or they're less advanced, or they're at a lower magnitude, a lesser degree, or a divergent degree that doesn't lead to the advanced systems that we have. I mean, I believe in God creating us, essentially laying out a roadmap. So, I mean, I could go as far as to say I believe that those things exist because they're kind of just products of the system that can come out, and that we're products of the system. And, we're basically, there's different levels to consciousness and to existence. And that's why we have reason, and these animals aren't as special as us. You know what I mean? I believe in that whole, we're touched by God, I believe. And that's why we have this consciousness that we have that's at a higher level than animals, and people can argue that animals have similar consciousness in that, but I really believe that we are more than just evolutionary, dominant to all these other animals. You know what I mean? There's something special about our DNA and our brains and our what we sense and what we do at life. It's just so far advanced,
Yeah, two things based on what you said. First of all, I'm open to all kinds of explanations. I'm open to the idea that we are divinely created. I'm open to the idea that aliens came here and engineered us. I'm open to the idea of the standard evolutionary model. I'm open to whatever you want to lay out on the table. I'm open to discussing it. when it comes to eyes of like a bee or a fly or something like that, where they have all these like almost prismatic kind of eyes, I think an evolutionary scientist would say that that is a very specialized form of eyesight that assists with them being able to dart around
Agreed.
real fast.
I had the same thought just now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you took your words out right in my mouth. That eyesight is specialized for their travel, the way they
Right.
travel, basically. Yep.
But
Agreed.
it's still two eyes. They're still on the front of their head.
Yeah.
And they still cannot see 360 degrees around. Honestly, I want to say that a chameleon can see 360 degrees. Like
eyes are still in the front, though.
Yeah, but they can really rotate them around.
They got them because they pushed them all out of their skull, you know? But they're still there.
It's irrelevant, you know? Right? They're still in the front.
Yeah.
And why, if... And it makes me question my whole concept of evolution itself because of what we talked about. The fact that I've always kind of gone back to like eyesight. Eyesight is for me the like strongest nail in the evolutionary theory. How did we get these eyes? You know, it makes so much sense. But you raise such good questions. Why across the entire landscape, the entire spectrum of animals, have none of them developed something that can see behind them? Because you're right, it would be so advantageous.
Yeah, it's like the most advantageous mutation ever.
Yeah.
Right? Or more eyes around or something, right?
Right.
Now,
why always two?
Yeah, well, okay, so I'll say that what I believe and what I understand and what, you know, our theory of everything is working towards is a mathematical explanation for this.
Yeah.
Right? We have math that works with combining and separating, right? Or at least duplicating copies and combining separate ones, right? With Fibonacci and binary, we'll call it, right?
Sure.
This we found is very, very analogous to mitosis and meiosis, you know, and the cell division and DNA division. And I think that we're going to come to find out that there's a mathematical explanation tied to Fibonacci and binary that leads to the unfolding of our cells and symmetry along with asymmetry within our bodies. That unfolds as the symmetry we see down the centers of our body and our two sides, right? The asymmetry between the front and the back, which is exactly what we're always looking for, okay? Mm-hmm. Symmetry with asymmetry, 90-degree intersection.
Symmetry and asymmetry.
And 90%,
simultaneously.
90 degrees intersected with each other. It's you know, if it's symmetrical this way, it's asymmetrical this way. If it's asymmetrical this way, it's symmetrical this way. And this is what we see with the human body. This is what we're finding in our math. And I think that that's why we see the body develop the way it does. As much as biology and DNA has the ability to adapt and mutate and change in ways that create all these different symmetries, or I mean all these different species, I think we stem from an asymmetrical system, allowing for this diversity, right? But we are forced to also follow a symmetrical system of building and universal laws that make our systems and bodies grow the way they do.
And this takes me back to where you said random mutation. And I agree. The mutations are random,
but they
follow a set of rules. And there are certain things that just can't happen.
Like
and
you
there
can't
are
grow fingers on your elbow. Fingers grow on the hand.
Yes.
Something like that.
Yeah, however you want to explain.
Well, if it was to unfold, right? We unfold,
sure.
Our arm unfolds as like a piece.
I just, I don't want to say something like that because I don't want to offend anybody that may have like some sort of genetic mutation, right?
Listen, the mutations
honestly,
occur like that, yes. And that's, but that's, you're so good about this, something. Great job. But we're saying scientifically in a naturally developing, normally developing without mutation, you might get 6 fingers or 5 fingers, right? Due to genes, right? But you're not going to get a hand growing on your shoulder with as a natural.
You're not going to get a finger growing out of your forehead.
Yeah, you don't get a third arm.
I'm pretty sure
or
I've never
anything
seen
like that. Yeah,
right?
And I think that's a good point, right? That you know, the mutations or the evolutionary adaptations that we see and changes through the biological diversity over time aren't necessarily a third arm that allows them to do things with 3 arms, and now everybody, that's the greatest reproduction. It has to follow. It's a change that follows those
So
laws.
even
Like
though we
you said
say,
it really well. Actually.
even though we say that the mutations are random, true, they are random, but they still follow a set of rules.
Yeah, like a mathematical, biological principles of symmetry
And
asymmetry
those
and folding,
rules,
yeah.
I think, originate from this theory of everything. Sure, from God, but from this theory of everything and this understanding that things operate in a certain way, right? How many hours have we spent looking at the periodic table of elements and how different elements react with each other? I mean, hundreds.
That's a whole
hundreds.
video right there.
But I think it stems from that, and even that stems from something even more fundamental.
Yeah, again, it's all on the spectrum, and I think that the fulcrum, when you look at it again, right, this is that symmetry, right? So we have a balance on both sides, but they're inverse opposites of each other. So you have asymmetry there, right? It's like it's like putting it's like when you put negative 5 pounds on one side and positive 5 pounds on the other, it actually balances.
Yeah,
and that's essentially the symmetry with asymmetry, and it's amazing. I think that the unfolding of this is another mystery on Earth that needs to be unlocked, right? It's part of that life. It's part of the theory of everything section of life, right? Because the deterministic and non-deterministic can be explained. Okay, we're antenna vessels that are controlling elements on the Earth, right? But how are we controlling those elements on Earth? Where's the programming come from in our cells that tell us to make the body the way it does, and change the way it does each time we reproduce? Where does that programming come from, and who wrote it initially, right? And yeah, how does it change us over time? Because right, it's all about knowing the system. I've always kind of lived my life like this, where I never worried about, it's not a good thing to not be a long-term thinker, but I was never really thinking in long-term, like, okay, I got to make sure that I have to do all these things for the next 10 days so that in 2 weeks this occurs, right?
I used to.
Okay. For me, I've always been a systematic type person where each day I'll follow the same rule set. And as long as I follow that same rule set each day, it will lead me to in 2 weeks. Because since I followed the same rules the whole time, I know it has to bring me there. Right. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, when you know a system, like if we knew the biological diversity system and the way it became more complex and the way it diverged and the way that it mutated, right? Then you would be able to better analyze the past and the future of where we were and where we're going to go. You know what I mean? In terms of evolution, rather than having all these gaps that we have. This is going to spark an idea in your head, I guarantee it.
It already has.
Okay, go ahead and put this one first.
My thought right now is that I believe that to be true. And I believe that the set of rules is exceedingly simple. I believe that nothing against string theorists, nothing against the quantum mechanics guys. That stuff is complicated. Okay?
Yeah.
It's simpler than that. It's building blocks. It's just how you put the Legos together. I admire the work that they do, and I think it's really pushed me and taught me a lot reading about it, but I don't think we're going to find the answer in string theory. I don't think we're going to find the answer in quantum mechanics. We're going to find the answer in simplicity and balance.
And that's what we look at with the ancients, right? That's exactly what we're saying. We truly believe, and we have finally found some real proof that they did know what they were talking about, and a little different than what we thought. And with that comes the understanding that they did it with simplicity. Yep. Right, so they figured it out in BC times. Simple. Yeah, with a manuscript and a paintbrush, and they were able to explain and understand mathematical systems in the universe that we can't explain today. The fact that they could do that without computers, without all the advanced technology they have, the collider and all this type of stuff, it's like there's a way to think through these things that's a little bit more systematic and more accurate than honestly following the scientific method and coming up with theories based on empirical evidence.
Yeah, and I hate to think of the ancients as simpletons, but they observe things in a simpler way.
It's
They didn't try to put something complex on it. They just looked at it as it was, forgot about, or they weren't even told anything.
yeah.
Maybe they were told something. Maybe there was divine inspiration. I don't know. But they just viewed the world differently. They viewed the world in much simpler terms. And then if you forget about all this complex, crazy stuff, it becomes easier to see those things.
Well, I'll give you a great example, right? And maybe we can end on this, but
Yeah.
thing is, the ancients, in my opinion, were like your grandfather, times 1,000.
Well,
Okay? Quite literally, right? But what I mean is, like, if you go into a Goodyear tire shop right now and you want to get your tire changed, they're going to bring in your car, they're going to put it up on a lift, they're going to pull your rim off, they're going to put it on this machine and de-seat the tire, and then they're going to strip the tire off of it and put it on another machine and put a new tire on there and reseal the rim and balance the tire and do all this shit, right? And it's going to be like a huge process to change this tire. Now on the farm with your grandfather, where they didn't have all those machines, right? He'd put that tire on there, tie a rope around the tire to tie it down a little bit, spray a little bit of fuel injector in there, or fuel injector cleaner in there, or some type of like explosive some type of gas in there, okay? And then light it off, and it would explode, inflate the tire, and seal the rim, okay? Right now, he's going to laugh at you when you go into that machine shop and you put all these tire on the machine and a rim and a lift and all this type of stuff. When he's out in the field with like a lever and a bar, lifting the car up, and a wrench, pulls it off, pops a tire. Like, he could do that in the middle of a field with a can of explosive propellant, okay? The ancients, they would laugh at your grandfather. You understand? Like, the way they knew how to do things was so simple and so, like, the simplest, best way to do it with the most efficiency, because we have to do it efficiency, right? We didn't have all those machines back in my day. We didn't have that explosive propellant back in my day. You got aerosol cans of spray in that tire, old man. No, we had to do it with a stick and a rock. You know what I mean? So I think that they overcame the disadvantages of technology and were able to figure out a way.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of examples still standing that would embarrass MacGyver.
Yeah, I mean,
in their simplicity and their execution.
Look at the plumbing level, right? I mean, when they learned like a water level and a plumb, they learned how to build precise structures with the simplest of tools. You know what I mean?
It's incredible. Yeah.
Absolutely. But yeah, we'll wrap it up right there.
Yeah, I think so. It's a good night.
Yeah.
Good conversation. Yeah. Dinosaurs with two brains.
Yeah.
We got evolution. We got it all, man.
Yeah. I'd like, you know what, for the viewers, throw in the comments if you can think of any theories that have fallen.
Yeah, please.
You know, what theories do you know that have fallen and turned into myths? Because it looks like dinosaurs and two brains two brains in a dinosaur was a theory at one point, and based on empirical evidence. So
now Google says it's a myth.
I'm still going with it.
It's great.
I'm still going with it.
Hey, who's to say it isn't?
That's it. My theory is that that was a brain in that cavity.
I'm sticking to it.
Yeah.
All right, man. Good night. Good night, everyone.